Good afternoon and welcome to this regular council meeting of Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024. We'll call the meeting to order at 1:01 p.m. I'll begin the meeting with the land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Cabmonaghan is located on the Treaty 20 Mississauga territory in the traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe people. We offer our gratitude to First Nations for their care for and teachings about these lands. May we honor these teachings. I'll look to council for approval of the agenda before us today. Moved by Councilor Byrne, second by Deputy Mayor Huntley. All in favor? That is approved. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest of the general nature of? Seeing none. There is no closed session, so we'll begin with a resolution to go into the public meeting in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act RSO 1990. And I get a mover and a seconder for that. Councilor Byrne, Councilor Natchoff, all in favor. That is approved. We'll begin the public meeting with a report from Matt Wilkinson. Matt, over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and through you, Mr. Mayor, and members of council, and members of the public. Before you is Planning Report PEB 2024-44. This report is regarding a zoning bylaw amendment, ZBA 07-24, which is required to permit the construction of two connected accessory structures, a shop and a lean-to on subject property. The amendment is required because the area of the accessory structures will exceed the permitted lot coverage of accessory structures in that zone. The purpose of this public meeting is for members of the public to provide comment and ask questions related to the application. The report recommends that bylaw number 2024-45 be approved to rezone a portion of the lands known municipally as 1115 Dial Line from the Oak Ridges Moraine Countryside Zone. Yes, Countryside Zone to the Oak Ridges Moraine Countryside Exception 6 Zone. The subject property is zoned Oak Ridges Moraine Countryside, Oak Ridges Marine Environmental, and is subject to the Oak Ridges Marine Plan Review Overlay. The proposed accessory structure will be located in the Oak Ridges Marine Countryside Zone and outside the more environmentally sensitive Oak Ridges Marine Environmental Planning Review Overlay. A single detached dwelling and accessory buildings and structures are permitted in the Oak Ridges Marine Countryside Zone, as Table 11A of Bylaw number 2018-58 as amended limits the permitted maximum lot coverage of accessory buildings and structures to the ground floor area of principal building, being the house. And the purpose and effect of the proposed amendment is to rezone the portion to the exception 6 so that we can, in the Oak Ridges Marine Countryside Exception 6 zone, the maximum lot coverage for accessory buildings and structures will then be 3%. All other provisions of the Oak Ridges Marine Countryside Zone will apply in the Oak Ridges Marine Countryside 6 zone. A portion of the portion that is going to remain will be the Oak Ridges Marine Environmental Zone, and the Oak Ridges Marine overlays will remain unchanged. Notice of the zoning bylaw amendment application was circulated by first-class prepaid mail to all assessed persons within 120 meters or 400 feet of the lands affected by the zoning bylaw amendment, and to all required ministries and agencies. Notice was provided by email to all township department directors, ministries, and agencies requesting notice by email. A sign of the notice was posted on the Dial Line and B line on the B Drive frontages of the subject property, and notice of the public meeting was posted on the township website. The notice complies with the requirements of the Planning Act. Township staff have not received any comment from the public. Staff did receive comments from Canada Post, Enbridge Gas, and Otonabee Region Conservation Authority. None of the agencies noted any objections to the application. Township fire departments and township public works departments requested that a driveway be extended to access the accessory buildings, and the site plan was updated to illustrate the future driveway. The township fire department has also requested confirmation that the accessory building will not be used for habitable or commercial purposes. Mr. Burkholder has confirmed the use of the accessory structure is for private non-habitable uses. And section 11.4.2 of bylaw number 2018-58 as amended states that no accessory building or structure can be used for human habitation or be used as a home business. The application before council has been reviewed by the planning staff in respect to Provincial Policy Statement 2020, Growth Plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, County of Peterborough Official Plan, and the Township Official Plan. The application is considered to be consistent with the PPS and conforms to the Growth Plan, the County Official Plan, and the Township Official Plan. Staff are therefore recommending that council receive and consider all comments related to the zoning bylaw application, and following the meeting, that bylaw 2024-45 be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Questions, members of council? Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair to Matt. I'm trying to rationalize or get my head wrapped around the idea that the floor plan of the house affects anything. Like I get the concept of 10% of the acreage being restricted to accessory buildings, but why if a person wants to have a modest home on this property? But then I'm hearing from lots of people in the community, they're worried about their stuff. So this idea that the building is geared to that, I'm having trouble rationalizing why that would have any bearing on it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Byrne. That's the way the zoning bylaw is written. If there was reason behind that, in the new zoning bylaw amendment, we may be looking at that. I see Ms. Ellis looking towards that, so I'll point to her.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Byrne, there is a different regulation for accessory buildings on the Oak Ridges Moraine. The Oak Ridges Moraine is an environmentally sensitive feature that is protected by its own legislation, being the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan. There are specific rules and regulations around development on the moraine, and those special requirements are reflected in our zoning bylaw. So that is why the size of the accessory building is tied to the size of the house.
Follow up?
Through the chair, any idea what the rationale was for that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Byrne. I think part of the rationale is that to a large extent, we are trying to minimize the development activity on the moraine in order to protect the environmental integrity of the features on the moraine. So that's why there are special rules and regulations. Similarly, you will find, not today, but maybe in the future, that accessory apartments or additional residential units could be considered in an accessory building on lands off the moraine. But if you are located on the moraine, an accessory residential unit has to be located in the house. That's the rules.
Follow up?
Through the chair, just so I'm clear, are they our bylaws or are they provincial bylaws or are they another organization altogether to do with this Oak Ridges Moraine?
Through you, Mayor Graham, to Councillor Byrne, the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan is a piece of provincial legislation. It is a policy statement under the Planning Act, and we must conform to the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan. And that's why you will find in both the Peterborough County official plan to a little bit, but in Kevin Monaghan's official plan, we have a separate designation for the Oak Ridges Moraine lands. We have separate zoning because of the environmental sensitivities associated with those lands.
Deputy Mayor Huntley?
Through you, Chair Graham, I guess I got two questions, if I may. And that's to follow up on your statement there, that if this legislation is set out by the province, how does this council have the authority to override what is the guideline of the province? That's question one. Do you want my second question now or later? Okay.
Through Mayor Graham to Deputy Mayor Huntley. So the provincial legislation does not specifically state that the floor area of an accessory building has to be the same size as the house. That is a regulation that the township put in place to protect the environmental integrity of the moraine and meet the intention of the bylaw. That proportion can be revisited when we redo the zoning bylaw after we redo the official plan. But it's something that when we create those regulations, we have to be aware and have to put in regulations that do conform to that legislation. So there may be some wiggle room in the future, but right now that is a bylaw that's in place today.
Other questions, members of council? Oh, sorry, second question, right, Deputy Mayor Huntley.
And my second question is the location of the accessory building. Like it's kind of when the map was up, like it's kind of right along the very edge of that property where there is another property and another dwelling, another resident. Like, is there a reason why it didn't go down the other side of the house and be kind of more into the property? Just curious whether there's a geographical feature or why it's so tight to the edge when there's an existing residence on the other side of that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor Huntley. Can you please go to Schedule 2, I believe, that shows the zoning? That one there. So that dotted section is the Oak Ridges Moraine plan review. So that's a different layer that's on there, which isn't a zone, but an overlay that we, when in discussion with Mr. Burglar, we kept the structures out of that area to limit the impact on the environmental sensitive area. So that's why it's hugged over to the corner, but still not so close to the lot line that it's impacting neighbors.
Other questions? If not, we're in the public meeting, so we can turn it over to members of the public wishing to speak to the application. If anyone in the gallery would like to come forward to speak to the application, you're welcome to. Going once, going twice, sold. So consideration of the report. So the recommendation or the consideration before us today is that we receive and consider any public comments received in this September 3rd meeting, and that bylaw number 2024-45 be approved to rezone a portion of the subject lands from Oak Ridges Marine Countryside Zone to the Oak Ridges Marine Countryside Exception 6 zone. Entertain a mover and a seconder for that recommendation. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councilor Byrne. All in favor? That is approved. I need a resolution to close the public meeting. Moved by Councilor Byrne, seconded by Deputy Mayor Huntley. All in favor? That is approved. Moving on, we have our next presentation, Miss Jeanette Levy-Smith. Welcome. So just hit that green button, Jeanette, sorry. Or sorry, the gray button that makes the light red.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. I'm very happy to be here in the beautiful part of our watershed this afternoon. And thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Council and staff for having me today. I'm going to go actually to the first slide if I can. So just wanted to acknowledge that this is part of our annual update. I like to be able to go around and meet again all of the councils that participate at the Tonabee Conservation in our watershed, and also provide some updates that we're working on. And through this presentation, we have embedded a lot of links and some interactive processes. They probably all won't work, but I do encourage you to look them up later after the presentation. So next slide, please. So this is our lands and our watershed that we have. Again, we have 8 member municipalities, and really to highlight the fact that we have not added any new lands to our management, into our lands that we manage through our conservation lands, and or the watershed boundaries have not expanded. We also have, just to highlight, we manage over 10,000 hectares of land, and those are a mix of our conservation areas, but also our managed lands, our managed forest lands, and such. I'm going to talk a little bit about our lands in a next slide, please. Sorry, I have too many papers here. So this is our board of directors, and again, Deputy Mayor is on the board, and our chair right now is Michael Medcalf from Trent Hills, and our vice chair is Kevin Duguay from the city of Peterborough. We elect a new chair and vice chair, which occurs every January at our AGM. Next slide, please. So this is one slide I've included around legislation and governance. And in essence, this could actually be a whole morning or whole day of changes and things that have gone on, both for the conservation authorities, but also for municipalities in the last while. So we are governed by the Act. So I have that link there. And just a few highlights of some of the legislation that has been implemented and enacted over the last few years. And right now we're fulfilling one of those obligations in our draft conservation land strategy. The strategy itself is a higher level document, and really, again, meeting one of the regulations that we have to do, but also really pointing to our next steps, which are creating management plans for our various lands that we own. So you will be seeing us in the future when we get to each of our various lands that we have in the municipalities. I would like to highlight, since 2018, there have been 38 amendments or changes to the Planning Act And since 2018, there have been 13 amendments or changes to the Conservation Authorities Act. So collectively, a lot of change for us, and navigating that change really requires good relationships with our member municipalities, proactive communications. And I do want to give a bit of a shout out to your staff, to your planning staff with regards to that. Next slide, please. Our annual report. So I do encourage you to go to our website. Our annual report was prepared in a GIS mapping. So it's very interactive. It leads you through various components in our watershed, but also talks a lot about the highlights that we have here on the slide. So I'm trying to capture a number of our programs and services that we've been offering out throughout 2023. So here in Cavan Monaghan, what those numbers also represent is 25 plan reviews were completed in 2023, and 42 permits were issued here in Cavan Monaghan. Next slide, please. And I did try this in an earlier presentation and it failed miserably. So I just have this up here as a picture. Again, it's very interactive on our website, and it leads you through our new strategic plan. This was one of the goals of the board, was to bridge our strategic plan that concluded in 2020. Of course, we were all busy then for the couple of years. And then with this new strategic plan that brings us to 2027. When there will be a new board in place. Next slide, please. And what I would, and amongst all of our activities that we have in our strategic plan, we do have a new vision and values for the organization. And so really wanted to highlight that for you today. We do report out on our performance objectives quarterly. We have 69 performance objectives for the organization. And now we have additional objectives through our strategic plan that we will be reporting out to the board on a quarterly basis. Next slide, please. So again, another opportunity for being interactive. So this is one of our category 1 is what we call what our mandatory services are. And around flood management. But if you do go to the ARC, to the mapping, which is the bottom point there, again, on our website, residents in the watershed can easily plug in their address into that mapping, and it will bring up we update this mapping on a regular basis. So it will bring up some very interesting information for residents if you want to be able to redirect people around, are they in the floodplain? What is some of the natural hazards that we have? They're included in this mapping. So it's a very accessible tool for members in your community to use. We often point to it, and we keep this information updated on a regular basis. So it's well-loved tool. Next slide, please. One of our objectives in our strategy, but also to help move forward in some of our actions is with our partners is around climate change. We realize that not one of us has the ability, the skill sets or the capabilities to be able to tackle these things, these large scale issues on our own. So we did partner with the Peterborough Public Health just recently, and they released their vulnerable assessment report. And what we found that we were able to contribute was data, a lot of strategies that we have used. So if you're working through your strategic plan, which I know at some point you are, and if you're also looking at these things, we would be very happy to work with your staff and provide any information that we have that would be valuable through this process to you. Again, this is one of our key components that we also do report out quarterly to the board on how we're doing with our own actions around adapting, mitigating climate change impacts to our lands. Protecting property and lives is our key objective in the Conservation Authorities Act. Next slide, please. So I do want to put this out. I know that Mr. Wilkinson will also be very familiar with this program that we have, but it's one of our Category 2 programs that we have. We have staff who are very skilled in what we call post-development monitoring services. We do offer this service to a few municipalities, but this is where the municipality would like to monitor some of the impacts over time to some developments that you have. So staff put together a proposal, and then throughout those years, we provide reports based on real data that we collect them from the field, and we do our analysis on that. So it is just information for the municipality and obviously for the property owner or the developer, but it does help to ensure that whatever you are developing, you are doing it in a responsible manner. Next slide, please. And I'd like to highlight a few of our campaigns that we have going. This is the Hope Mill. Hope Mill is in Otonabee, South Monaghan. And right now we're working with the Friends of Hope Mill to put together a campaign for roof restoration. It's a very historic building, and so it's going to be an interesting redevelopment of that. So I'm sure some of you might know some of the Friends of the Hope Mill. They do quite an interesting woodworking and projects there at the mill. And if you're interested, every Thursday morning, they're out there still. Next slide, please. We're also doing a capital campaign. We've been very successful with our capital campaigns. In the previous year, we raised over $80,000 from the community with community's help for our Jackson Creek Trail rehabilitation work. And this is our second capital campaign with Haroldstown. And so we're looking to do some enhancements there, trail enhancements, tree planting, and also some signage. And to date, we have raised close to $20,000 for the work that's going on there. Again, I encourage you to look at the links. They're very interesting. In terms of things, Haroldstown himself was an artist from our community, and he'd be celebrating his 100th birthday. And he donated the property to the conservation authorities. Conservation. And last slide. So that's really my presentation, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you and your council might have. And again, thank you very much for having me here today. And just want to also acknowledge that the good working relationships that we have with your staff are very much appreciated.
Thank you for that, Ms. Smith. Questions, members of council, with regards to the presentation? Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair to Jeanette, you touched on it. Your permit process, how are you doing as far as keeping up with that? Or are there any timely delays that have been a problem, or is that an issue for you?
Through the mayor to the councillor. So every quarter, we also prepare reports for the board on our timelines. Part of that is regulations, but also part of that is in our efforts to be accountable and transparent. And so we actually are exceeding the timelines of issuing our permits for our watershed residents. So we're doing very well.
Other questions? Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Through you, Chair, to Jeanette, I think you're being a little bit modest on that one. If I recall, the last quarterly one, what was the average turnaround for a permit?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was about a day, the average.
It is modest. Thank you for that, Deputy Mayor Huntley. Other questions with regards to the presentation? If not, thank you, Jeanette, for coming, and thank you for all the good work that you and your organization are doing. And we appreciate the positive comments about staff as well. So we'll look for a motion to receive the updates from ARCA for information. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councillor Natchop. All in favor? That is approved. Next, we have a delegation from Mr. Dean Del Mastro with regards to a zoning amendment adjustment. Mr. Del Mastro, nice to see you.
Thank you, your worship, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Dean Del Mastro. I serve as the president of Del Mastro Motors Limited, which operates two companies here in Cavan Monaghan, both Cameron Cycle and Del Mastro Horseshoe Bay Resort Marina. We also have Del Mastro RV Center and our car wash, Del Mastro Auto Spa, Don't Drive Dirty on Lansdowne Street. And altogether, I have 5 operating companies that we operate. We employ about 34 people full-time, 13 in the township of Cavan Monaghan, plus a number of part-time staff in Cavan Monaghan as well. And some of our staff are fortunate to live in the township of Cavan Monaghan, but not everyone is that fortunate. I'm here to talk to you specifically about Horseshoe Bay Resort Marina. I reflected when I came in, I looked at your mission statement. Your mission statement talks about being committed to delivering responsive and cost-effective services that provide for economic, social, and environmental well-being of the ratepayers now and into the future. And what I want to talk to you about today is how what we're doing at Horseshoe Bay is, in every sense of the word, responsive and reflective of your mission statement. I believe we're in 100% accordance with what you as a council are seeking to achieve. So we purchased this property in June of 2021 and took possession in September of 2021. When we purchased the site, it was operating as an RV park and marina, as it had since it first opened in 1972. The original owner, Tom Smith, provided a number of pieces of documentation for me, mapped out where things were on the property and so forth. He also provided me with an affidavit related to the operations of the park. Shortly before we took possession, I became aware that there was a significant number of concerns on the property that had been outlined by Kyle Phillips related to an inspection that he had performed on the property. Since that time, first of all, we went through systematically, once we got possession of the property, and eliminated every single one of those building code violations, every single one. Since we purchased the property, we've invested about $2 million into cleanup and restoration of the site. The site was, from my perspective, from a safety perspective, it was very unsafe. It was an environmental catastrophe waiting to happen. We thought that we could go in when we first bought it. We thought we could just go in and kind of, clean it up, cut fresh coat of paint and kind of straighten some things up. But every time we turned over some dirt somewhere on the property, we found another thing that was frankly substandard. There were 19 trailer sites on the property that had RVs on them. And what I can tell you is nobody with an electrical license had ever been on that property and ever done any work on it. There's an easement that runs down the side of the property, which belongs to the township of Cavan Monaghan, a former road allowance. Those woods in there were full of discarded tires, metal, barrels, debris of every sort. I don't think they went to the landfill site very often. We made more than 3 dozen trips to the landfill site to get rid of garbage from the site. We also took about 3 dozen loads of recycling off the site. That was before we could really do any work to it, because to see what you had, first you had to deal with the garbage that was there. We've been working in close contact and in concert with a number of regulatory agencies. The actual harbor itself, I guess I'd take a step back and just say the entire property is a property that could not exist today. It simply would not. Similar to the Trent Severn Waterway itself, these things could not be built today because we brought in regulations, we brought in protections, we brought in zoning bylaws, we brought in all sorts of things over the years that simply would prohibit these things from happening today. It's kind of a relic from the past. It's something that we used to be able to do, but we don't do anymore. And I know there may be rationale and reasons for that. But this property, quite simply, could not be built today, could not be developed today. The former owner told me, for example, the harbor in 1972, he made a phone call. He called a local contractor, he showed up and they dug the harbor. If you did that today, you'd be in shackles. You simply cannot do these things without permits, and you wouldn't get a permit for it. That's reality. So we've been working for some time because the zoning on the property, and I brought a copy of that. Just give me a second here. The zoning on the property is recreational commercial. I believe it's called C3-5 recreational, and it speaks specifically to a marina. And before we got possession of the property, I had former Mayor McFadden set up a meeting for me, and I met with a number of officials here in the township. We talked about the specific zoning of the property. It seemed to have a unique carve out to it, which most recreational commercial properties do not have, which is that it did not specifically list camping as one of its permitted uses, but it did have something called natural linkage. Natural linkage is kind of, from my research, is kind of a gray area in the legislation, in that it talks about uses which aren't properly or really well defined, and it relates to properties adjacent to water or properties where people may want to take recreational activities that would be part of nature or a natural kind of experience. So I came and met with individuals here at the township because I wanted to have that specifically listed, or at least an understanding that it was a legal non-conforming use, something that would be a vested right on the property. I was made aware of other instances where properties had, through time, inadvertently had uses somewhat restricted that perhaps were grandfathered or vested, and that township council had dealt with that through a vote. And I was specifically referenced a property which is on County Road 10. And I was told what that process was, which is why I went to the previous owner and I said, what I need from you is an affidavit that makes clear that this property has operated in this fashion since its inception in 1972, which he did provide me that affidavit. And you don't have to take my word for it. I think there's some slides that show photos of the property historically. Could you put those up for me? Okay, thank you. No, you don't necessarily. Well, I can reference that if you like, but you can go to the 1973 aerial photo if you don't mind. There it is. So this is a photo of the property in 1973. You can see the adjacent property. So this was all one property at the time, which included what's now 376 Carolyn Street, or 374. And you can see that the harbor is being dug there at that time. The other harbor is completed. There's another photo that shows you this property in 1959, and it's basically all a wheat field that was recently under tillage. So you can see on that photo towards the bottom, you can see a number of what looks like structures along the water line. Those are recreational vehicles. Those are trailers, and then there's also boats at the property as well. And you can go forward to, I believe there is a 2022 image there as well. Sorry, 2020, sorry. Yeah, there you go. So that is basically the way the property looked when we bought it. There was a second residence that had been built on the property, which is, I use the term residence lightly. It was actually a park model trailer that they had basically tore the wheels off, set onto the ground, and then built a structure around it. And that property was being lived in all 4 seasons of the year. There was at least 4 different residents that were living on the property year round, which of course is outside of any kind of zoning for recreational properties. And there was a number of what I would call very shady activities, which is why I think the neighbors, if you spoke to them in the area, would speak very favorably about the impact and the influence that we've had on the neighborhood as we've basically some of those activities which I can tell you speak to the very darkest of undersides of our society, they've all been eliminated. There's currently 8 people that are renting trailer sites at the facility. We have upgraded the water system that was previously there. We've spent about $600,000, a little more than that, on upgrading the electrical services, which was all done by a permit with Hydro One. It was designed by Bertholet Engineering. All of the work was completed by HB Electric, which is a Cavan Monaghan-based electrical services company. And all of the water lines, all of the sewer lines, everything on the property has been reinstalled, repaired. All of these things work now. The water system, when we took the place over, was simply dumping massive amounts of pool chlorine into the water. It's not healthy. Yes, it'll score a 0 on E. coli and chloroform, but ingesting that much chlorine is simply not healthy. We put a system in which is fully certified by Peterborough Public Health. I brought with me, by the way, Michael Lefebvre. He runs Lefebvre Inc. Mike has been the principal contractor at the site for us when we've hired folks. We do a fair amount of work ourselves, but Mike has been the contractor. When we took the property over, the shoreline was eroding at the rate of about, depending on the year and the rate of water flow, about 2 feet per year of the frontage of the property was washing away. And the actual banks of the harbor, this had never been done properly, as you can imagine. The banks of the harbor were falling into the water and eroding every year. So we went to Parks Canada and spoke to them about fortifying those banks so that would stop. Erosion is something obviously that they don't want either. And we did receive that permit. Part of what we had to do, and we did this under the guise of a licensed Ontario architect, was move the former store and gas bar building. We moved that out to the driveway and built that on a engineered platform, which Mike completed that work, and he was under the direction of an architect to do so. Mike provided an affidavit as well. And one of the things that Mike highlights is his experience with the property goes back a long, long way, more than 3 decades. He was actually there when they re-poured and was on the work crew that poured what is now the existing concrete boat ramp, and witnessed how the property operated then. And I'm sure if you wanted to speak to him, he can talk to you about the difference in how it operates now. I think there's a couple of important things that I'm seeking to accomplish here today. One is, as many of you or some of you may or may not be aware, legal action has actually been commenced by your regulatory officer, Kyle Phillips, against my family and against the property. That legal action would have the consequence of shutting every business down that we are operating on the property. And I want to explain why that would happen. We've successfully attracted a very significant international, in fact, the most significant international operator of rental boats. And that activity won Peterborough and the Kawarthas Waterway Destination of the Year. Now, we did that. That's about an $8 million investment. We did that without a dollar from this council, without a dollar from Peterborough County, without a dollar from the city of Peterborough, without a dollar from the province of Ontario, without a dollar from the federal government. When the boat went into Smith Falls, the town of Smith Falls built them all new docks. The government of Canada both provided incentives to bring the boats, and they provided incentives to use the Rideau Canal. The province also kicked in money. We've received none of that. We just did it. We attracted them, we brought them in. So far, we've brought into Cavan Monaghan, we brought visitors from New Zealand, Australia, Germany, Austria, England, France, all throughout the United States. I've got pictures of license plates I can show you for folks that have been coming from all over the United States. This is a huge win. It's a huge win not just for Cavan Monaghan, but for Peterborough County, for the Trent Severn Waterway, for tourism, and frankly, to just make the place kind of cool. If you want to see some investment, and what I found when I was in office, in federal office, we made an investment into the downtown. And that investment became contagious, and other people started investing, and we started seeing things pick up, and the downtown reinvented itself. Now, the downtown today in Peterborough has some challenges it didn't have then, and they need to be dealt with. But those types of things can be contagious, and I guarantee you what we will see if we continue on the path that we're on right now, we will see an investment into our economic infrastructure, our tourism infrastructure, because people will believe in it. They'll believe in it again. They used to, but at some point we just kind of, a lot of properties became like what the former Willow Bend Marina that we own today became, run down, and kind of something that you, like a blemish to the township as opposed to an asset and things that people can be proud of. So what I'd like to achieve today, first of all, you're the executive of the township. The staff of the township carry out the rules and the bylaws that you have set in place. As I've said many times in my emails and my writings to Mr. Phillips, I want to work constructively, collaboratively. I want to work together. I frankly don't understand the process that he wants me to follow. There's nothing new going on at Horseshoe Bay, nothing. Everything that's going on there has been going on for 52 years. Now, it came from a much more informal time, where if you wanted a harbor, you dug it. If you wanted to have a marina, you had one. Now, in order to do all of these things, we have applications, we have studies, we have zoning bylaws, we poll the neighbors. We vote on it. We see if it's consistent with official plans. We didn't do that. I went to the county and asked them for the official plan for the township of North Monaghan. They don't have one. They don't have any historical records on the township of North Monaghan. It's like it didn't exist. So I'm looking to determine if the property has vested rights, if it has grandfathered rights. I can't even find the documents that would relate to when this property received its zoning. But what I can say is that in 2005, the zoning became more restrictive. So I can't tell you what existed before that, but what I can tell you is that for 50 years, nobody objected to what was going on at that property. So how could it not have been consistent with the zoning that it had, right? There's no way. There was buildings built, they were built under permits, all of these things existed. And as I said, I believe that if we work together, we work collaboratively, constructively, we can achieve your mission statement. We can have a property that this township will put on the front of its magazines and say, hey, we've got this here. And we're going to build a business, quite frankly, and attract people that other places in the county will look at and go, wow, I wish we could do that. Wow, I wish we were Cavan Monaghan, right? That's what we can do. So I need your help. I'd really like you to pull back the lawsuit that's been, or the court case that's against me. I've put over 50 hours into that, responding to it. I'm not a lawyer. And you know what? My first response to anything is certainly not to fight. It's to work collaboratively. It's to work together. It's to achieve great things. I've got a history on that. But if you push me into a corner and you force me to fight, I'm going to have to fight because we're talking about my family's livelihood. And I'd really rather not do that. I'd really like to work together with you. So if there's any questions, I would really like council to recognize that this is a property that for 52 years has served exactly the way it has. You don't have to believe me, believe your lying eyes. And that, you know, there is a solution that doesn't involve fighting with each other. It doesn't involve, this year's been difficult enough, I think, for most people. I heard just the other day that Peterborough Public Health was actually reporting that city councillors and others have been reporting constituents calling them and that they feel that they're under undue stress and duress. And that's one of the #1 things that they're hearing from people. We've got a lot of people that are under financial stress and strain this year. And if you're in business, it all comes down, you feel that. You feel it very, you feel in a very real sense. And I think for me, you know, from Easter Sunday all the way through to Canada Day. I never took a day off, including Mother's Day, which I will warn all of you is not a good idea. And that's just because I didn't see any opening, to not work. It's a kind of year. A friend of mine owns an excavating company and he keeps going around saying, you got to survive to 25. This is a tough year, right? So on top of other challenges that people are seeing, I've got this challenge where I'm getting letters from a lawyer that's telling me I have to respond by such and such a date. And all I'm saying is, wait a minute, let's just deal with this. This doesn't make any sense. If you want to know something about the property, and there's all kinds of misstatements about the property in the documents, all kinds. And it's because I keep saying, please come tour the site. Please, if you'd like information, just meet with me. Let's meet. Let's talk about it. I don't get responses to that and I don't understand. And I will say to each and every one of you on council, I would dearly welcome any of you to visit. I'd love to show you the property. I'd love to show you what we're doing and what we're about. And I'd love to talk to you about what I think is possible for the property and the developments that we're going to see. I'm working right now on a business plan that will more than triple the number of boats that's at the property. It will more than triple the economic impact of that operation. And I just believe that we're only scratching the surface on what we can do. And long term, we'll achieve everything that's in your mission statement and give you something you can be quite proud of. I thank you for your time and I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Del Mastro, for that. I'm sure there'll be a number of questions. Members of council who would like to start? Deputy Mayor Hunt.
Through you, Chair, to Mr. Del Mastro. You're weird. Anyway, sorry. I haven't seen personally the work that you've done down there. I've seen it previously, so any work is probably great work. So really appreciate you cleaning it up and definitely bringing and attracting the boat to the area is massive, huge event. And I've seen all the press releases and actually have been on the boats in Smith Falls, so I can appreciate how amazing that is to bring in there. I'm speaking from myself, maybe not the rest of the council. But you bringing this forward is almost like the first time I've heard anything about issues going on down at your marina in your area. So I'm still not entirely sure what you're asking council to do, because I don't think anybody on council knows exactly what the issue is. So sorry.
So I guess there's a number of things that I'd like for you to do. The first is, I think I'd really like it if council would speak to your staff, find out why we're being taken to court on this, why there's a legal action that's been commenced on your behalf without you being made aware of it. Because when I spoke to a number of people on council, they're not aware that our company, an employer in your township, that's bringing investment into your township, has even been taken to court by your township. I'd really like to see that pulled back so that we can have time to work through this. Because as I've said, I don't understand, and I've asked for this, I don't understand the process by which they're trying to force me through in order to have, which I believe is a legal non-conforming use, acknowledged by the township. Because if I bring this as an application for a new business, it's going to be unsuccessful. And it's going to be unsuccessful because in order for it to be successful, I will have to challenge things and spend an inordinate amount of money to challenge them. It's simply not worthwhile. This property doesn't have that kind of economic potential at this time to do it. So for example, the floodplain is set about, I don't know, depending on what part of the property, between 2 and 3 feet above the most of the property. Now, the part where you drive in is effectively at the floodplain height. But the floodplain, and when I brought Cambium in to have a look at that, they kind of chuckled and said to me, "You're never going to believe it." And I said, "What?" He said, "Well, the floodplain is exactly the height of the township road. Like there's no science to this. They just looked at the height of the township road and said anything below the road's floodplain." And I mean, in part, that's a very I mean, there's limited money and resources. I understand why these things happen. But in order to challenge that, I would have to do a study and I would have to have people come in and they would look at, you know, water flows and all these sorts of things over time. And it would be very, very expensive to do that, right? What I can tell you is that even when the city of Peterborough flooded in 2004 and there was 3 feet of water in downtown Peterborough, this property didn't flood. It has not flooded since I've owned it. It has the building inside. People can look inside it. It's been there since 1980. If it had flooded, you'd see watermarks on the water timbers inside that, or the wooden timbers inside that building. There is no watermarks on anything on that property. It has never flooded. Doesn't happen. It's higher because when the harbor was dug, and I can show you from the 1959 photo, and Nels will understand this, being an old time country kid like me. That is a field that's under tillage. And if that was a wet field, especially with the equipment that existed in 1959, and that photo is a spring photo, I can tell you because I can see what's planted in it. When you see it bigger and its proper density, you can see that it's been recently tilled. There's tractors at that time and equipment at that time had to drive around wet spots in the fields. I know because I used to do it, right? When I was a kid and working on my family's farm, if there was a wet spot in the field, we didn't till it, we went around it because otherwise you'd have to call a helicopter in to get the tractor out because it wouldn't go through it. But challenging the floodplain, for example, would be really expensive. So when they say, well, I want you to bring an application for a new business, I know from my previous experience, even the Trent Severn Waterway itself, we had to pay, and maybe you heard this, we had to pay a multi-million-dollar flooded land claim, the federal government, that went back to the 1860s and the 1870s related to First Nations. Because when they created the Trent Severn Waterway, they flooded massive expanses of land. You could never do that today. They just did it, right? And this property similarly, you'd never get a permit for a harbor. You'd never get a permit to do the things that they've done, especially within a floodplain. Without challenging the floodplain, you'd never be able to do these things. It's a relic from the past. And when we apply new zoning bylaws and new restrictions to these things, they simply don't, you can't get them through. So the first thing, as I said, that we need to do is let's step back from the precipice. Let's not fight. Let's work together. Let's understand that what I'm doing is consistent with your mission statement. And I'm here to work with you. I want to have a good relationship with the township. I want to have a good relationship with your staff. I only want to contribute, and quite frankly, we'd like to do well on it as well. You know, we work as we all do to benefit our families, and that's what I'm doing. So that's the first thing. And then I think the second thing we need to deal with is this issue of grandfathered or vested rights on the property. I believe, as I said, I can establish. You can see it in photos. I can establish that everything we are doing on the property is consistent with what's been done there for 52 years. And I can also assure you that every piece of work that's been done on the property, anyone is welcome to speak to Mr. Lefebvre, not just today, but anytime, about the work that's been done on the property. You can speak to HB Electric. You can talk to, on my staff, I employ a Red Seal plumber. He's worked closely with Peterborough Public Health. We have all the certifications from them. Everything that's been done on the property has exceeded any standard. And frankly, I can tell you, because I'm into a lot of parks in this area, because one of our businesses is selling RVs, there is no park, there is no marina, there is none in the area that would be built to the spec and to the standard that we've built this to, or that we have refurbished this property to, and we're proud of that.
Thanks, Dean. Just maybe for council, and it might direct some more conversations and questions, is if I ask Kyle Phillips to sort of explain from his perspective sort of the proceedings that are occurring, and then that might, you know, help inform council about that as well. Kyle, can I ask you to do that if you don't mind?
Through you, Mayor, to council. I will agree with Mr. Del Mastro. When I attended the site a couple of years ago, he had cleaned up a lot of issues that it was my first time seeing the site that had obviously been there for some time. So he did clean it all up, and I had good hopes that things would proceed in that manner. I won't get into all the details that we've talked about here. I can tell you the high level things that he's asked for. The court case has proceeded because things have stalled for too long because of the planning amendments required. So it all comes down to the legal non-conforming issue. The small things like the buildings being moved, all that, that's building permits, but we can't issue building permits unless all the zoning's in place. So we've had a pre-con to discuss what would be required for that. Staff has reviewed all the information we have on file. And a lot of this we can see has existed, but we can't find any documents that show that it ever was legalized. So for something to be legal non-conforming by staff, it has to have been legal at some point. So yes, we acknowledge by aerials and everything, we totally agree. It's been there. We've got the affidavit showing that the stuff has been there, but we don't have anything showing that it was ever there legally. So as far as staff is concerned, we can't deem it legal non-conforming, therefore zoning bylaw amendments are required and possibly official plans. So the building code stuff building permits can't be issued, inspections can't occur, and that's why there's no need for me to come out to the site anymore because I cannot issue anything with regard to the trailer park. I can't issue any permits out there until the planning requirements are fulfilled. Those haven't proceeded. That's why the court case, because of our statute of limitation, has proceeded to get things moving. If things continue to move, if you want my advice and my recommendation, we can pull back on the lawsuit, but we've initiated it so that our timelines stay in place. We have no need to take Mr. Del Mastro to court to resolve any of this. We would prefer to resolve it outside of court as well. But things with the legal non-conforming aspect have not furthered. So Mr. Del Mastro coming forward today, that's a good start. So we can look at taking that back, no problem. But the main thing here is that we have nothing showing this was ever established or developed legally. I do agree, and I have total faith that the work he's doing on site is probably very high level from what I saw in my initial time I attended. But that's the big crux here, is that there's nothing showing this was legally established. So staff cannot proceed with any building permits or anything until that's rectified.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Phillips. Questions, members of council? Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair to Dean, I thank you for getting 13 jobs into the township. As a township, we've been struggling for over 5 years to get jobs, which was a forefront kind of notion, which is good. I know back on our road tour, we were given some knowledge that there was an issue at the marina. I was, as a counselor, never privy to the details of, so I don't quite know. And the little write-up here from Kyle just recently has enlightened me a lot. Now, I was down at that marina over my lifetime prior to your ownership, and I've been there since you established the La Boat Tour, which looks really great. I probably never be able to afford to go on it, but it looks really great. And I look at what you're saying, like the impact of that Trent Severn waterway for this Ontario for the last 100 or more years is so useful and beneficial and everything else about it. And we've got to the point now where something that prosperous wouldn't be allowed because of rules and regulations. So I see your dilemma there. I see both sides of it. And I just think that moving forward, it's a benefit. I've never actually experienced any flooding anytime during the springtime when I've been down in that area. So I don't know how you'd get around the hurdles of proving something there's no records on, but I look at the situation as very beneficial to the township. You were talking about the dollars you invested. Am I safe to assume that your taxes on the property have gone up since you upgraded?
Honestly, I have staff for that, Jerry. And it's a terrible thing to say, but I couldn't tell you what the taxes are. I will say they're reasonable compared to what I pay in the city of Peterborough. So take pride in that. But obviously, you know, the property does incur taxes as a commercial payer. I will say there is a prerequisite, or there is an established precedent, which is 1535 County Road 10. And that was a property that was operating as an art school and art gallery, but it was only zoned residential. And it's on hazard land which means you would never get a rezoning of that property. You'd certainly never get a commercial zoning on that property, given that it's got a hazard designation. And I think what council did was they recognized that even though there wasn't a documented permission for the property to be used as such, it had been used as such for so long, and no one had ever complained about it, that council simply voted and adopted it as a legal non-conforming use. And I believe that's within your authority, because if you go back to 1972 and you consider that no one has ever complained about the fact that the property is operated in this fashion, and in lieu of the fact that we cannot find documents that say it was either allowed or not, we're in a vacuum, right? We're operating with, we can't see where it was ever applied for, and therefore we have to assume it never was. I don't think that's the case. I think that what we can say is the fact that no one prior to us taking possession on it had ever came forward and say, hey, we've got some off permit use on this property. And frankly, the township was on the property many, many times. There was other buildings built on the property under permit during that time. No one's ever brought anything forward. No one ever said, hey, you have to get these off the property. So if we look at that, and what I will say is, for example, the building that I can't get a permit for, we had no choice but to get that building open. It is the reception office for LeBoat. And they have to have an office. They have to have a dedicated, they've got a secure system, and it requires a dedicated internet line. There's no place to put it on the property, and without it, we wouldn't have had it. So the building had to be moved from the shoreline because the foundation underneath it had collapsed. Its deck was falling into the harbor. It had to be moved. And so we had a structural architect come to the site, and see if I can find it here. He said to me, look, he said, this is simple. Here's how you're going to build it. He talked to Mike and said, here's what I want. Mike said, no problem. I can build that. And he said to me, you don't need to get plans for this. This is, we're just putting a foundation under it. You don't need plans. I said, you know what? I want them anyway. There's the stamped plans from an Ontario licensed certified architectural engineer. And the building has been built to exactly this spec. And when I can apply for a permit for it, I guess, I'm not even sure what permit I need. I didn't build a building. I fixed one. We moved it on the property, admittedly, but if we didn't move it, it was going to fall into the harbor, and that's a bigger problem, right? And it was built again, this thing was put on deck blocks on dirt. It was never going to last, right? I don't know. I grew up on a farm, and I understand every spring the ground heaves, it gets soft, and then it hardens and things shift, right? So nothing was built properly. Now it is. Sorry.
Mr. Phillips, could you speak to this building in question? Because like I said, from my understanding of the applications, or not the application, but the zoning issues, if the building is for the LeBoat operations, like in the conversations and the due diligence I've done with regards to the file, is the zoning holding back the permit for that building, seeing as though it doesn't seem to be relevant to the trailer portion or the zoning issue in question? Can you maybe highlight that and give some clarity?
Through you, Mayor, to the rest of council, to date, we've had different uses of the building with parking control and stuff. I'm sure that was for the long-term plan. But yeah, if this is strictly for the LeBoat operations now, if that's the intended use of this is operations for LeBoat. LeBoat is a permitted use. The marina is a permitted use. If Mr. Del Mastro is saying that that's all that's going to be intended to be used for now, then yes, we could issue a permit for that. And it would be, just to clarify, just be a relocation permit, just to look at the new foundation. The existing structure is what it is. So it'd be a permit for relocation, that's all.
Okay, so it sounds as though there's progress to eliminate that issue with regards to the building relocation. Okay, so I'm just trying to park piece by piece as we can go through. Other questions, so members of council, other questions, Councillor Edgerton, and then I'll go to you, Jay.
There, I got it. I'm quite familiar with the property down there, and years gone by, it was a dumpy looking site. And all the people traveling up and down the Trent are looking at that right there, and it is a fine facility down there right now. So congratulations on that, Dean. And you say you stopped a whole bunch of pollution from the chlorine and that going into the river. So we're moving ahead, so I don't know why we can't work together and get on with business like we'd like to have it done.
Thanks. Counselor Byrne.
Through the chair, the concept of grandfathering, it's everywhere. I don't know, I mean, why there's such a struggle here with this concept. In the trades and buildings, First Nations, all of it. There's just so much that the new regulations in their broad sweeping things don't take into account. So there's lots of times where this has been done in the past. So I'm thinking there's a way forward from there.
Other questions? Deputy Mayor Huntley?
Through you, Chair, I'm kind of agreeing with Mr. Councillor Byrne here. No, it doesn't hurt. And I believe that you've done great work down there. I think there's, it's an absolute asset to this community. It sounds like there's a lot of complex issues that are going on, and I really do believe staff and yourself can sit down and start to parse through this and pick them apart one at a time, as kind of did with one building. I hope we can get to somewhere. I mean, I'm not sure, again, like what you're looking for. Like, I don't think as a council right now, we can say grandfather this thing and move on. Like, I don't think we have enough details as this has just come to us. But I mean, I'm quite happy to make a recommendation that, staff kind of prepare a report for us and let us know what's happening and kind of a path to a solution here, and, where we can help and where we can't. But you just to give them direction and say, make grandfather and away you go. I don't think anybody at this table would be able to do that at this point in time.
Counselor Natchoff.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I echo the same sentiments as Deputy Mayor Huntley, and Councillor Byrne and Councillor Edgerton. And I do commend you on the wonderful work that you've been doing to date. It certainly is an asset, and we're all definitely wanting to go in the same direction of what's best for the region itself. Obviously, water use and recreation is a big part of the tourism in our community. So hopefully, as suggested by Deputy Mayor Huntley, we can work together and have greater discussions and dialogue as to what can be done. I think that a report and more information is needed at this time, but I definitely do appreciate you coming in today. You've made some great points, and once again, thank you for your hard work in the community so far.
Ms. Hurley, would you like to make a comment?
Thank you. Through Mayor to Council and Mr. Del Mastro. I think that just for clarification here, it's important to understand that reports have to go before council, and for reports to go before the council, that needs to be an application. So there's been a lot of conversation, I believe, over the last 3 years about getting to a place where a report can come forward to council. So it's not that council isn't, or staff isn't bringing something before you. If there is no application, whether staff supports the application or does not support the application, we still have to get to a position where we can bring a report forward. Okay. At the end of the day, staff will make a recommendation based on the policy of today, which we know. And whether we support an application or we don't support an application, that would go before council. But we've never had an application. Is that my understanding?
Okay, Mr. Del Mastro.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't know how to bring an application for legal non-conforming. I put it into an email a number of times and said, listen, why don't we just, I don't understand why, I need a meeting. I need to understand what we're doing here. Because I don't want to bring an application for a new business for something that's 52 years old. I'd like to have council determine if what I'm doing is legal non-conforming, because Cambium says it is, the appraiser says it is, others say it is, the previous owner says it is, but staff says, well, we're not sure, because we can't find anything that says this was ever legal. So how do I bring that application, I guess, is what I would ask you. Because when we went to when we had the pre-construction meeting, frankly, I listened to it and I thought, what are we talking? Like, this is not the process, that I spoke about in 2021 when I met with John, and I can't remember, John Conley, and I can't remember the other gentleman's name. They outlined something completely different, which was effectively a much more informal thing, which was to basically bring us the plans, get us an affidavit, and I understood that once those things were provided, that there might be a process, but how I would apply for it, I have no idea.
Ms. Early, would you like to provide some clarity on that?
Thank you, through you, Chair. Ms. Ellis, is there an opportunity for you to provide clarity on the process that you're looking for so that a report could go before council?
Through Mayor Graham to members of council and Mr. Del Mastro. So there is no application form to establish a legal non-conforming use. Generally it's not very common, just so we're all aware, this is highly unusual, but not unprecedented. So we would be looking for a specific request from Mr. Del Mastro as the property owner, requesting that we confirm legal non-conforming status, and he would have to provide justification to support that request. So affidavits, air photos, previous information, whatever information supports your position, we need to have that. Because we do have in our hands old North Monaghan planning documents, and I'm sorry that you have been unable to access that. If we had known that, we would have provided it for you, so.
So if I'm understanding those comments, so just to try to bring it all together. What I'm understanding is that I think maybe taking the onus off Mr. Del Mastro in this regard is that council could direct staff to work with Mr. Del Mastro and at all with all the staff and whomever would be appropriate representatives therein to come back with a legal opinion and a report about a legal non-conforming use to council. Is that a direction that is above board? Because I know, like I said, like Dean can't direct staff to do certain things, but we can work with staff or direct staff to work with Mr. Del Mastro to seek a legal opinion on a legal non-conforming use. I think that would be the extent of what we can kind of do today to determine that, because from what I understand, and this is just a part of the process, there's some documents in the delegation that staff haven't seen before. And I think we need to work together to share all the information at everyone's disposal. To Dean's point, he's mentioned, certain things that he's not been able to access. So I think in doing that, and that's how lawyers work, they get all of the precedent data together and then they sort of tell us exactly how to proceed if that's an option. The thing that I would also like clarity, so maybe you want to answer that one first, and keep it in one and two parts, Karen, if you could.
To you, Mayor Graham, members of council. Yes, you can direct that. So we would take the information that's available today. We would respectfully request Mr. Del Mastro to provide anything else that supports his case with a specific request to the township for the legal non-conforming status. We will pull together all of the information that we have available, and as if council directs us, we will work with Mr. Del Mastro to say, this is what we think is our position based on the information we have. We can get a legal opinion if that's council's, if we think we need one, and then we would report back to council and present all of the evidence with a recommendation, and then council can make a decision based on the evidence before them.
Okay, so that's part one. Obviously not forecasting the outcome of that process. So what I wouldn't want to lose is time, because as Yvette had mentioned in the discussion, we still don't have a zoning bylaw amendment application. So is there any reason that we couldn't do those two things concurrently so that, should the outcome, alleviate the need for the zoning bylaw amendment, if that process can be abandoned with minimal costs associated with it? But should it not, we're not losing whatever time and due diligence is required to go down the legal non-conforming use. Is there any complications with doing that process concurrently? I don't know if Kyle, Karen, or whomever might want to speak to that, but I'll listen to anyone who has some suggestions.
Through you, Mayor Graham, to members of council, Mr. Del Mastro. So I can speak to the planning part of it. I'll leave the legal side to Mr. Phillips. So with the filing of applications, there is a requirement to have a complete application. So they would obviously a completed application form and the supporting documentation, which to support an application moving forward will include some floodplain information and justification as to why this use is appropriate at that site. So Mr. Del Mastro could get that together, apply for it, and then we would be under the clock in terms of processing those applications. They can run concurrently. I would suggest that it's probably not practical.
So for clarity, this suggestion would be procedure down the legal non-conforming path and sort of explore that and get the legal opinion back and then determine, then that outcome might omit the need for the zoning bylaw amendment altogether, if I'm understanding the planning legislation correctly, or might just require that the application process begin. So that's the recommendation for staff. Okay, now I understand. Okay, thank you. Kyle, is that okay in your opinion or anything consistent? Okay, great. So now that we have that information, questions, members of council? If not, what I can provide is that recommendation, as I mentioned to Karen, that staff work with Mr. Del Mastro, share the information collectively, and come back to staff with a report on the legal opinion about a legal non-conforming use on the property. And then that allows, and then we'll leave the ZBA. If you want to provide the application, that's on your jurisdiction, but there is obligations to that. Ms. Hurley, you want to correct me when I'm going offline here?
Yeah, just clarify. Just with regards to that is I think we need to put in there the application so that he fills out the application. What did you call it?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Graham, to members of council and Ms. Hurley. So there is no application form, but it would be a letter or an email specifically addressed outlining exactly what you're asking for and what your expectation.
Councilor Byrne. With that, so now that we understand the process that Mr. Del Mastro can submit a letter asking for a legal review of the non-conforming status. I don't want to get too caught up in the vernacular to disrupt anything, but I think we all understand. Clerk, do you understand the direction that we're working on here?
Through you to you, I just want to see clarification that we also want staff to do a legal review of whatever the information is we come back with of the legal non-conforming use of 374 Carolyn Street.
I'm happy if we just leave it vague enough because I don't want certain semantics and language to just, the end result will be coming back to council with a report. That's what we're looking for, I think, if I understand council correctly. Okay, I'll get to you just after I'll let Cindy speak to that.
For clarification, that's fine. So it would just be that council direct staff to work with Mr. Del Mastro to complete a review to confirm or to clarify if there's a legal non-conforming use of 374 Carolyn Street.
Councilor Byrne, you had a question?
Through the chair to Karen, you mentioned earlier that this is unique, but is not brand new. So is there a history? Is there some case study or anything that Mr. Del Mastro might be able to look at to understand this process, whatever it might be? I have no idea, but you did allude to the fact that this legal non-conforming with no history isn't brand new.
Through you, Mayor Graham, to Councillor Byrne. So it's not a brand new process in that Mr. Del Mastro referenced the property on County Road 10, which we have been through in the recent past. It is not a common occurrence because most properties have been developed in accordance with the bylaws of the date, and we have records that can be used to confirm those uses, property locations, building permits, etc. In this particular case, there has been a use established, but to date, we've been able to confirm the legality of that establishment. So that's what we'll be looking for. So every situation in planning, and I know people will roll their eyes, but every application and every property is treated on its own merits. So we will be looking at this property based on the information we have available to us that applies to this property. We do follow a process in that we do look at old zoning bylaws, old official plans, the current regulations, any applications that have been applied for in the past that have information, affidavits, local knowledge, those are the things. So over time, I can tell you that non-conforming uses, the intention you will read in our official plan is that those uses cease to exist. because they are non-conforming. So eventually they should not exist. But to prevent undue hardship, it is within the realm of possibility to permit the continuation of those uses. So that's what we would be looking at with this type of situation.
Follow up, Councilor Byrne?
Through the chair to Karen. So now I'm a little bit confused because you told Mr. Del Mastro that you have access to records that he wasn't able to find for North Monaghan that would encompass this. And at the same time today, I've been told this is going on for like 3-4 years. I'm just curious why somewhere along that whole length of time, yous aren't aware of whatever was documented back in the day, whenever that might have been happening in North Monaghan.
Not really clear on your question, Councilor Byrne, but Karen, if you want to try, but so the question is regarding like that we have access to certain records, but we haven't got a letter from Mr. Del Mastro to explore the legal non-conforming use. So we don't explore it. There's been some initial look-ins to see based on some of the exchange of information, but it's just like a zoning. The zoning doesn't change without an application. So until you get the application process or the letter requesting the process, it doesn't start. So, because I looked at the notes from the pre-con meetings as well, and it was discussed about the need for an amendment and things like that. So that's been shared. But I think what we're trying now to do is sort of understand if this, now that we know the process for a legal non-conforming consideration, which there is precedent and there has been in this township, legal reviews or legal opinions sought on non-conforming uses as well. So that's kind of the process for how it starts, but now I think we're all clear and hopefully can move forward. Karen, is there anything I missed in that regard?
Through you, Mayor Graham, to Councillor Byrne, I just want to confirm. So we do have old records in terms of old planning documents. So we have zoning bylaws from the Township of North Monaghan, probably back to 1973, if not the one before that. So we do have those records, but I don't necessarily have all the building permit files and that. So in 1998, we had an amalgamation of North Monaghan, Cavan, and so and I didn't work here then, so I'm not, record keeping wasn't the same either. So, we have what we have and we try to make the best use of that, and we look for what we don't have, but we do our best.
Very good. Okay, so I've made that motion. Councillor Edgerton is willing to second that motion. Any questions about the motion? So we're all clear? Okay. Vote on the motion. That is carried. Thank you, Del Mastro, for your delegation, and we'll look forward to working with staff with you. I think we need a motion as well, if I'm not mistaken, Cindy, to receive the delegation. We can combine it? Okay, so very good. So well done. Thank you very much.
I was just again going to reiterate, if anyone has an opportunity anytime to come and visit, by all means, I love to have an excuse to go out in a boat. So if anybody's interested, please come and see. I think seeing is believing. You'll get a more real understanding. And the president of LeBoat is coming in on the 10th, and I'm pitching her on a very substantial expansion of boats to the facility. We've actually got the top rated facility in Ontario. So they've got 2 other locations. Our ratings are substantially higher. And then including customer satisfaction, but also experience ratings. We're in the top 5 for all of their sites globally. So I think that bodes well for us. So if you had an opportunity, you wanted to meet with her when she's in town, I'd be happy or delighted for you to meet her. So thank you very much, everyone.
No, thank you for that, Mr. Del Mastro. And I have been by the property, and again, just to echo the comments, like it is, I couldn't have told it was a trailer park when I was driven by in the last year's fishing in the Otonabee over the last 20 years, but boy, it's definitely a marked improvement. So congratulations and thanks for that hard work. All right, moving on. Now the next item is the minutes of the regular meeting held August 12th, 2024. Can I get a mover for the approval of those minutes as presented? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Natchop, all in favor. That is approved. Next are the minutes from the committees and boards. We have the Downtown BAA Management Meeting minutes of June 13th, 2024. That those minutes be received for information. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councillor Byrne. All in favor. That is approved. Now we are at the reports section. Mr. Hutchison is here today. Report Public Works 2024-16 single sourcing Alarmer Line culvert relining. Over to you, Drew.
Thank you, Mayor Graham. Through you to council, before you, we have Public Works report
2024-16 with recommendations regarding single sourcing the Larmer Line relining project. The recommendations before you is that council approve single source procurement as per section 5.6.2 D and 5.6.2 I of the purchasing bylaw number 2020-22 for the Larmer Line culvert relining project to Carchedi Excavating in the amount of $84,708 with net municipal HST of $1,490.86 for the total amount of $86,198.86. As mentioned, this is a single source project due to the specialty of the project itself. There's only a few contractors that do this sort of project in Ontario. Carchedi Excavating is the most local company that does it. They have done the last number of relining projects for the township. Additionally, I'd just like to add that the quotation is within budget and it has came down since the last project in 2022, which is another positive as well. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Drew. A couple questions. One, obviously, single sourcing is a dangerous game, but I understand there's some technical specificities that have restricted the number of businesses. I've seen Carchedi trucks in the township. Are they currently doing any? They're currently working in the township. Is that correct? And doing any projects? I've seen them on other tenders before, so we have a working relationship with them. Can you just confirm that?
Through you to Mr. Mayor. Yes, currently Carchedi is doing the Lisa Court reconstruction project for us. They were the low tender for that project and they've been working on that since about the middle of July.
Thanks for that. Questions, members of council. Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair to Drew, on this concept of relining the cement box culvert. And I get that it might be specialized pumping in the cement around a galvanized, I don't even know if they're allowed to use plastic or not. Where is the stand as far as just ripping up that box culvert? I know it's a little more disruption to traffic, but basically anybody can do it. If the cement culvert is the problem, is there a possibility just cutting the top off, dropping a regular culvert or two culverts in there, letting it settle with gravel, and then at some point down the road, we finish the topping off? Is that cost effective or has that been looked at?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Byrne. We have chosen to do the relining because it is cost effective. As we see in this quotation, it's about $90,000 for the relining. To do a full reconstruction, it would be over 300,000 is the estimate that we've done or that we've been receiving from surrounding projects in the area. We haven't explored the option of, like you said, just taking the top off of the existing box culvert and putting a steel culvert in like that. We haven't gone down that route to get prices or not.
Thanks, Drew. Other questions, members of council? Councilor Byrne.
Does that, through the chair, sorry, does that mean that it might be something that be looked at if we can't do it now because of the process, that at least we could look at it down the road as a more feasible way of doing it? Because the other dilemma is once you pack the inside of that culvert with cement around a new steel culvert, when you go to reconstruct at some point in the future, when that steel culvert gives out, I would think that you're going to be into a lot bigger job than you would be if we just cut the top off it today. So just a thought. I just looking at some ways to save some money for the taxpayers.
Drew, can you speak to this at all? Because I know relining is a relatively, it's not the way things have been done historically. Is there maybe Wayne or Drew, can anyone speak to the relining? Because I know with the amount of, I think it was 20 to 25 million dollars worth of work in the county on just culverts alone that were identified. This is something that a lot of municipalities are using, but I mean, it's not relatively, you know, it's fairly new when it comes to construction versus replacement. Can maybe Wayne or Drew can speak to that?
Mr. Mayor, the process of relining is, as you mentioned, it's been used a number of years by different municipalities. County of Halliburton uses it, County of Peterborough does in some locations. The idea is to cut down on your capital cost and still have the structural adequacy of the culvert. This is one of the culverts that's reviewed under our road needs, and it is structural, so it's not quite as simple as just taking the roof off and then putting a couple of culverts in. This is something that has to be structurally as adequate as it is under a new build. So the idea is that the relining, whether it be plastic or steel, both work. They have to be put in place. They're power grouted around the outside of the culvert. And it was brought in, it's done on a lot of the 407, 401 culverts, mainly because it cuts and reduces in half or substantially the capital cost of the culvert replacement. And that was the idea. So it's not new, but it is cost effective, and you do end up with a culvert for a lifetime expectancy that you're wanting going forward. So it is a way of handling it. Yes.
Okay, thanks for that, Wayne. The recommendation in the report, is that council approves single source procurement as per section 5.6.2D and 5.6.2I of the purchasing bylaw number 2020-22 for the Larmer Line Culvert Relining Project to Karshidi Excavating in the amount of $84,708 with a net municipal HST of $1,490.86 for a total amount of $86,198.86. Any mover? Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. Very good. Moving on, 11.2, Peterborough County Official Plan Update. Ms. Ellis.
Thank you, Mayor Graham, members of council. Planning report PEB 2024-35 is before you today with the recommendation that the report be received for information. This report outlines the contents of the meetings regarding the Technical Advisory Committee for the new county official plan. As you're aware, we are revising it to meet the requirements of the new provincial planning statement, which were released a week and a half ago, which will come into effect on October 20th. So that work is ongoing. In the report, I've addressed some of the major issues that do affect the township of Cavan Monaghan and tried to give you planning's opinion about how those policies affect us in moving forward. So to date, we're in agreement with much of what is happening. The one item I've identified in the report is a cross-border servicing policy that we have taken the message that we are in support of it. And it's our expectation that at least in our official plan, we will be having a policy somewhat similar to the city of Peterborough. County staff seem to think that they need county council direction to add that in. So that is a little bit up in the air, but it's something that we will be looking at when we do our new official plan. In the report, I've also outlined some things that happened with the approval of Bill 185 that is currently in place. So we are adjusting our processes a little bit as we go forward to bring ourselves into compliance with those requirements, notwithstanding the fact that we have an official plan policy that requires pre-consultation. We have a pre-consultation bylaw. We are still encouraging and offering that process. We're just massaging it a little bit to meet the intent of the provincial legislation. So we do have another meeting in September. Just so you're aware, going through the new PPS, I am going to report back to you about things that are of particular importance to Cavan Monaghan, but I'm also making notes to myself to go to the TAC to ask questions about what are you doing about this and what are you doing about that. There is a provision in the new PPS that talks about the growth associated with MZOs, and before it was outside. For those of you who were here before with the growth management, the growth in an MZO was on top of the growth that was permitted in the growth management strategy. Now, when you do a new official plan, that has to be folded in. So I'm going to ask the county, are they folding it in? Because we have, at this moment in time, a significant number of MZOs. So those types of conversations are still ongoing, but I will report back and certainly flag anything that is of particular concern to staff.
Thanks for that, Ms. Ellis. Thanks for the update. I thought it was, a lot more content in there pertinent to the township. So just with regards to the timeline, I know that the new PPS just came out and the county has been waiting to hear back about ROP for 9 months, maybe longer. And you mentioned, I think it was October 20th, if I'm not mistaken. So should maybe Deputy Mayor and I be expecting that the county OP will be back and in conformity by October 20th? Because, I mean, we haven't seen it. I think it's more like 11 or 14 months. And we haven't, like, I know there's been committees working on it to bring it into conformity because we sent it to the province. We said, well, don't send it back to us and then have us to rework the entire thing for the legislation. But we were also expecting that legislation over a year ago. So any clarity on if that's so by October 20th, I guess, to rephrase the question, are we expecting to have the county OP back? No. Okay.
To you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. No, October 20th is the day that the new provincial planning statement is in full force and effect. So our decisions will have to be consistent with that document. So what is happening, the county official plan, we are moving forward. We're getting close to the end. I believe, though, that the county is still waiting for the Ministry of Municipal Affairs to advise them whether they can amend that plan with a series of modifications or whether the ministry is expecting that the county submit a new plan. So that will direct the course of action. And that course of action then obviously affects our future course of action with our own official plan. So it's on my list to follow up with county staff when we meet on the 12th. So the first meeting in October, we should be able, if they have any information, I know they're waiting and their local Kingston staff are trying to get the answer.
Well, hopefully, I mean, having been a part of that council where there was pressure to meet a timeline of July 1st to have a county OP all conform and then be told, yeah, the legislation's not pertinent anymore and be delayed a year for that. I mean, these planning documents really matter with getting anything accomplished moving forward. And we haven't, as this council, even been able to start our own OP that impacts things like the zoning bylaws, et cetera, that you do after the fact. So it's a real disruption to get anything accomplished in the term of council. So hopefully, let alone the cost associated with the county OP. Oh my God. Anyways, we'll leave that for another day. Questions for Ms. Ellis? Councillor Byrne.
Through the chair to Karen, back months ago, and this is for my personal benefit, I attended a Peterborough Council meeting where they first came out with a notion of cross-border servicing. I'm just curious today, is there been follow-up talks with the townships, the other 8 communities, if anything progressing? Because one of the reasons I went to the meeting back then was to stay in the loop, and I haven't been noticing any information coming along.
Through you, Mayor Graham, to Councillor Byrne. I cannot speak for the other municipalities. I don't know what conversations might or might not have happened with them about cross-border servicing. I know that we have had a couple of instances to chat with the city of Peterborough about the availability of servicing for development on our side of the line, but there's been no application yet and nothing to really report back.
Yeah, and my understanding, there's also, the city does not have a policy for cross-border services either. Like they've just amended their OP. So until you have a policy, like there's a lot of, I mean, I'm on a number of committees with Mayor Leal, and so we have informal chats about certain different things, but there's only so fast you can move until policies are in place and things of that nature. So the county OP is one of those pieces that needs to move, but we'll continue to move forward. But council only comes and deals with, similar to the discussion with Mr. Del Mastro, until there's an application that pertains to it. It doesn't really exist from a council intervention standpoint. It's all just sort of gossip and rumor until it's actually on paper and moving forward. So, other questions with regards to the county official plan update report? Otherwise, we can look for a motion to receive it for information. No more questions. Deputy Mayor Huntley will make that motion, seconded by Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. Council and committee verbal reports. I know most of the committees have been suspended for the summer. Any verbal reports? Councillor Byrne.
Through the chair, I'll just mention down at the AMO conference in Ottawa, thank the taxpayers of the community for sending me. A lot of talk, short on some details, But it was informative and it did give me a chance to network a little bit.
And we did get the PPS out of it. So there was one big foundational piece that we've been very much waiting for. So thank you for that. And thank you for representing the township at the conference, Councillor Byrne. Seeing no other hands, a couple of small details. With regards to the Peterborough Police, there's been on the board for Peterborough Police that I sit on behalf of the township. There's been a lot of discussions about incorporating some or the opportunity for different personal people with those Ring devices to subscribe to a program that the Peterborough Police Service is offering to share the content should you happen to be having that camera facing the street and a crime occur. So there's more information that I'll send out to forward to council. I think there's been PSAs. I believe Ms. Ayat has sent out a bit of information. The acronym is escaping me as to what it's called. There's some clever acronym for it, but I don't want to get it wrong. But I'll share that information around. It has been shared by the township and the Peterborough Police Services because it's kind of like you put your hand up to volunteer your content and then they can, if you're in the area where things have been occurring, you can allow them access to your thing. So it's a participation based system. So that's something that I know a lot of the newer homes have those devices. I don't personally have any experience with them. It kind of freaks me out. But if you are in there with all of the issues in the city, it makes sense that they're trying to crack down on these crimes. Question, Councillor Burke?
Through the chair to yourself, on that notion, I was kind of on the impression that once you gave them permission to access your surveillance, they didn't need to come back and ask you again. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe that's my understanding. Yeah, that's why it's a participation. They can't get it. They often go door to door to solicit access to it. But if you participate up in advance, they don't have to do that legwork to get access to it if they have areas where it's possible. So, Councillor Knapchild.
Thank you through you, Chair. Just one quick note, the GRCA, we had a separate job interview conducted to hire a new chair for the Recreational Users Committee. That was last week and the decision was made, and the new appointee is a gentleman named Bob Gallagher, who will be the new chair for the RUC of the GRCA.
Oh, thanks for that, Councillor Knapchild. Can I get a motion to receive those verbal council committee updates? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Knapchild, all in favor? That is approved. General business. So there's an item on the agenda that I asked to be included. So there's a number, unfortunately, childhood cancer is becoming more prevalent. And obviously there's a number of, I'm sure many of us are familiar, if not personally, but there's been a number of unfortunate instances where children in the community and the township have, been having to confront this disease. So September is National Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. So it's a time to reflect on how we can better understand and address the needs of children affected by cancer, as well as their families, caregivers. And with cancer being the leading cause of death from disease in children and adolescents in Canada, it's obviously something that I thought was warranted, just acknowledgement and to try to be compassionate and recognizing of those struggles that members in our community are very familiar with, unfortunately. So can I get a motion to receive the declaration of September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Knapchild, all in favor? That is approved. There is no correspondence for information, correspondence for action. We have a letter for the annual Peterborough County Plowmen's Association. I believe it says right here that we usually provide a $200 contribution towards the event. Having participated myself, it's quite a fun celebration of agricultural heritage. So if there's no issues, I'd like to make the motion to provide that same $200 in funding again this year. And I take a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Byrne, Councillor Edgerton, all in favor? That is approved. Bylaws, bylaw number 2024-45 being a zoning bylaw amendment for 1115 Dial Line be read a first, second, third time and passed this third day of September, signed by the mayor and the clerk and the corporate seal attached thereto. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, Councillor Byrne, all in favor? That is approved. There is no unfinished business. Any notices of motion? Seeing none. The confirming bylaw, that bylaw number 2024-46 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the meeting held September 3rd, 2024 be read a first, second, third time and passed this third day of September, signed by the mayor and the clerk and the corporate seal attached thereto. Can I get a mover for that bylaw? Councillor Byrne and Councillor Knapchild, all in favor? That is approved. Lastly, a motion to adjourn the meeting today. Deputy Mayor Huntley, Councillor Edgerton, all in favor? That is approved. There is a number of upcoming events and meetings. The special council meeting with regards to Town Hall Consulting Strategic Planning Workshop is Monday, September 9th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. That is in the council chambers. The Municipal Revitalization and Heritage Advisory Committee meeting is Thursday, September 12th at 9 a.m. And that is a change in the previously forecasted date, as we talked about. Councillor Edgerton, on Friday, September 13th, we have the Kevin Monaghan Harvest Table Dinner at 4 p.m. between Needler's Mill and the Old Millbrook Arena. So we have another special council meeting with regards to Landscape Planning Limited educational workshop on Monday, September 16th at 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. And that is in the council chambers. The next regular council meeting is Monday, September 16th at 1 p.m. There is yet another special council meeting from Town Hall Consulting Strategic Planning Workshop on Tuesday, the 17th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Kevin Monaghan Public Library Board meeting is Tuesday, September 17th at the Millbrook Library Branch at 7 p.m. Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting is Friday, September 20th at 1 p.m. And the Millbrook Valley Trails Advisory Committee meeting is Monday, September 23rd at 4 p.m. Thank you, and we'll see you all on the 16th. Take care.